Good morning, everyone. Welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started. Most of what we're going to cover today is information that several of y'all have been hearing for the last several years during these webinars and as you've been doing work plans. So we're just going to really hit on some changes and things like that. The first thing I really just wanted to address is how excited that we are to be able to have this opportunity to go into year 8. I know this is an opportunity that we didn't think was an option just a few weeks and months ago, and I know that none of you did as well. So that's something that we're really excited about. We'll talk about sustainability here in a minute, and as we think about year 8, then that's definitely something that we're going to focus on. I know when you all did work plans last year, we were still wondering what year 7 would look like as far as Gear Up 3.0 and who would be a part of it and stuff like this. So I think that makes it a little bit different. Also, I guess I just want to be really upfront, and I know that for all of you, year 7 has really been difficult and a challenging year in many ways, knowing that it's the last year of this relationship and this process with Gear Up Tennessee and the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. So I realize that it's going to be another awkward year, if you will, but I also think it's a great opportunity for us to continue to work in these schools and these school systems that we've made such an impact, and you all have done such great work, so we'll be able to continue to do that as we really focus on sustainability. I can assure you there won't be a surprise like this next year. We're basically spending every dollar that we possibly have to be able to make this work, and I'm so excited that we have been able to do this. So we'll go ahead and get started. A couple of kind of housekeeping things. We have everything muted, so you can't speak right now. That's just so we don't have feedback from all the different sites. But what you can do is you can go either to the Q&A section, or you can go into chat and type in a question or an answer or a comment or anything that you may have. You can do that during the presentation, or at the very end we'll have a question and answer session, and you can most certainly do that at the end. Or if we needed to unmute you so you could actually ask a question at that point in time, we can also do that. You just need to kind of let us know through the chat or through the Q&A, and we can unmute anyone that we need to. Also, I know that there's just a few of y'all on here today. This is kind of a quick turnaround, but this will be recorded, and then we'll send the link out to everyone out about that tomorrow. We should be able to have that available. The other thing I would mention is I think we've gotten out most, if not all, the awards for next year, so you know how much of money, the amount of money that you're looking at for your budget for the collaborative budget section. If you haven't received that, then you'll receive it today, so you will know how that will work and how that can play out. All right, with that, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Goals for today, and like I say, a lot of this will just kind of be recaps of things that y'all have seen and heard and done in the past, so we'll go through it pretty quickly, but I also want to be thorough and want to be able to answer any questions that y'all may have. The goals for today are to provide a foundation for developing a Year 8 work plan and budget, telling you there are a few things that are different that we're going to do this year, and I want to let you all know what those are and how those will work. Kind of the next steps for implementation. What everyone usually asks is what are the deadlines and when do things have to be submitted and turned in and those sorts of things, so we'll go through that. And then finally have an opportunity for questions and answers that you all may have. And of course, if there are questions that you don't think about as we're doing this today and you do later, then feel free to follow up with me or Shayla, either one. I won't belabor the point as you all have been working on the goals and objectives of Gear Up for the last 7 years now, 6.5. But just like in all of the previous year, all of your services, all of your events, everything that you do, you're going to make sure that they are aligned to the Gear Up goals and objectives, and everything that we're trying to focus on and things that we're trying to accomplish, whether it's with parents, whether it's with students, whether it's with your school faculty, meetings that you have with your steering committees, things that you do for sustainability, everything should be aligned to your Gear Up goals, as well as the Gear Up objectives that, again, you've incorporated this into every work plan, and this will be incorporated into the work plan that you have this time as well. First, a couple of questions about Match. We offered everyone the opportunity to participate in Year 8 during NCEP, and I know that Match was one of the questions that several people had when we talked to them about this at NCEP. So again, if you haven't already received your award letter for next year, you'll receive it today, so you'll know the amount of money that you would receive for next year's contract. You will be required to have 100% match for that award next year. The requirements around match are going to be just like they have been You'll have an implementation guide as you have for all the years in the past, and it will go through match and the different ways to capture match and things like that. But there won't be any changes in the methods and manners that you will capture match, but it will be 100% just like it has been for the last 2 years. Now to get into the work plan development itself. As we've had in the last couple of years, there's actually 4 documents. All of these I emailed out to everyone yesterday. They are the work plan development guide that kind of goes through the entire work plan process. Your required service chart, which many of you kind of think about as your Bible. It's what you look at on a very regular basis and make sure that you're kind of hitting each milestone and each service. Are you looking at the percent of students that are going on campus visits, or the percent of students that are participating in registering for their Tennessee Promise or completing a FAFSA? All of those requirements, the parent services, family services, services with your school faculty, all of those things are on the required services chart that was sent out yesterday. And then you have the 2 kind of templates that you actually complete and turn in. So one is the collaborative work plan that first includes information about your collaborative, the names and addresses and that sort of information on each person that's involved. Last year, as all of you know, that we included a sustainability plan, and we'll go over that here in just a minute as well, but it's the same sustainability plan that you had last year that we've also included this year in the collaborative work plan, and then your collaborative budget. I think across the board, for everyone, your budget, your award is less than what it has been in years past, so we'll talk about that, how we expect that spending will be different next year than it has in years past as well. And then finally, the school work plan. Your school work plan is very specific. Some of you just have one school, some of you have multiple schools, so you'll have a school work plan for each school, each high school that you serve, and that will actually detail out each service that you're going to have to your students, your families, and your teachers and faculty at your schools. As you've done in years past, we've found out again and again that the ideal work plan team is not just a site coordinator or project director, but it's when several people get involved, people on your steering committees, people from your school counseling staff, your administrators, different partners that you have in your community, your post-secondary, from different nonprofits, sometimes people from fiscal at your offices, at your central office. I realize that it's very difficult sometimes to get these people involved, and especially if you're trying to get them all at one time, and maybe that's not an option. But I think what you'll find is in different areas of the work plan, there's different people that have different levels of expertise and different areas of involvement and what they can contribute. And what we found is we end up with richer work plans by having these different people involved in different ways, even though that is a harder thing to do. And it becomes a more comprehensive approach, becomes a more comprehensive plan rather than just the great ideas that you have. It also gets the buy-in of these people. So the last part of this slide talks about sustainability. When they're involved in the planning, then you kind of get their buy-in and their support up front. If they think this is a good idea, if they feel like that this is the way FAFSA should be done this year, or this is the way we could do Tennessee Promise, or why don't we go to this institution, or you have a post-secondary institution that's a representative on your work plan development committee from one of your post-secondary institutions that's in admissions or in financial aid. If they have an idea about a campus visit or how that institution can be involved in financial aid, that's kind of putting them on the front end, stating what they will do to support that next year. Again, there's 4 areas of the required services chart: the student and family section, the professional development requirements for educators. There's a section for grant implementation activities, just like we've had in years past, and then those statewide types of activities. Again, this outlines the minimum Gear Up Tennessee requirements. I realize that all of you go well and above and beyond, but this is just kind of a lot of these requirements mirror what the U.S. Department of Education require for all Gear Up programs, and then we've supplemented and added a few things to it. It kind of made it Tennessee specific. But again, these are minimum requirements. You all often do 2, 3, or 4 times more of what's required on a regular basis. And I think this is going to be really important this year as we talk about the amount of money that you have and things like that. So we give you some opportunities to network and be collaborative with other people who can provide those things this year that you may not have the funds to support. Again, we don't want to provide the same services necessarily to every single student. Our students have different needs. They want to go different places. They want to have different types of careers. Some need every different levels of tutoring. Some need mentoring. Some need to go on multiple campus visits. So our hope is that throughout the year you will have data, and we will also be able to provide you the data so you can provide student-level interventions and provide students with the right services each time, rather than just kind of using a shotgun approach and providing the same thing to every student. The collaborative work plan, as you know, has 7 different parts. The first part is the information that you're going to include about the project director, the site coordinator, the principals, the fiscal office, and those sorts of people, that you will tell us who is involved and give us their contact information in those first 2 sections. Section 3 is an area that you've had each time where you talk about the facilities and the equipment. A lot of times this will be equipment that you may have purchased with Gear Up funds. This is where you'll include technology, computers, and things of that nature, so that we make sure that the space where you are serving your students is adequate to do so. The next section is the grant implementation activities. This includes like regional meetings and your cards and things of that, the maps and things that we do on a regular basis. The sustainability plan, we're going to go through here in just a second and go through specific questions in the sustainability plan. But I think one of the things that's really key this year, again, we jumped into, during year 6, we jumped into year 7, kind of wondering what's going to be next for many of our sites and that unknown. Going into year 8, we all know that this is going to be the last year of this grant. And by doing so with a smaller amount of funds that you've had in year past, I think there's obviously a negative aspect of that, but it's also going to force you, if you look at the things that have been very successful, if you look at things that have been most impactful, then you've got to reach out to other people, other organizations, other post-secondary institutions, look at nonprofits, individuals within your schools. In order to make some of those things work that you've done in years past, this year it's going to require that these other people and organizations are involved in order for you to do similar things in what you've done. So hopefully, instead of having an approach that after Gear Up funding, everything's gone, we feel like this will kind of give us a step-down approach. Obviously, we want Gear Up activities and things that you found to be so successful to continue after all Gear Up funding is gone completely. So this will kind of give you kind of 2 years, we feel like, to get to that point and be able to continue to support your students through the future. And then lastly, the signature page on the collaborative work plan. If you look at the sustainability plan and the collaborative plan, there are 3 questions. And this has just kind of been based on some research that we've done over the last couple of years. These are the same 3 questions that we had in the work plan last year. So there's actual 2 pages or 2 parts of the sustainability plan. This is the first part of it, is asking, according to some of our research that we've done, and you all know this as well as anybody, that the site coordinator has been key to the success in all of our Gear Up sites. So the first question is this a position that you all plan to continue and maintain after Gear Up funding is gone? Is it something that you may step down, that it would be go from a full-time to a part-time, or how is it going to be funded? Are there going to be 2 or 3 different people that will pick up that role or something like that? The next question talks about the steering committee meetings. Throughout this grant, we've called them Gear Up steering committee meetings, but there's no reason that after Gear Up funding is gone that you couldn't continue this type of meeting and have it as a college access steering committee or a college access and success steering committee meeting, that you would continue to have these people that want to be involved in your schools and your community that are part of this planning and a part of this process. So the question is about that. And then the last question is, who at specifically at your central office, or would it be a school principal, who is the person that at the district level is still going to ensure that this level of college access and success work that you've done and done so well over the last couple of years, that this will continue? Who will be in charge of kind of organizing and planning and the oversight of this work? The next piece that we have for sustainability, and we had this last year, I mentioned earlier that what I would ask you to think about, and as you meet with your work plan development team, we realized that going into probably even next year, but certainly going into the year after you no longer have Gear Up funds, you can't continue to do everything that you've done that's been successful. Some things just took a lot of money. But we also recognize that a lot of things just have taken time. So what we ask you to do is first to think about what are those things that you think have been key? What are those things that you feel like that have been most successful that you just can't do without? And then as you get to that point and you identify those 5 to 10 things maybe, then look at how you can make those things happen. Is it that you're going to have to reach out to a business for a certain amount of a donation? Is there a post-secondary institution that would be willing to provide a bus to bring students to that campus visit? If you're talking about FAFSAs, are there some teachers or counselors or administrators or people in the community that would continue to be your FAFSA team that would continue to do that work? So that's what we'd ask you to think about there. Again, we realize that everything that's on your required services chart, you're not going to continue the year after the grant. But what are those things that you feel like just that have to happen for you to continue the great work that you've been doing? Next is the school work plan. You will have a school work plan for every high school that you're serving, and you'll also see in the required services charts, just like in year 7, there's actually 3 metrics that are related to the students that you're going to serve in college as well. You want to make sure that in the school work plans that every required activity, every activity that you list, you should include all of those activities that are in the required services chart, that all your activities are supporting Gear Up Tennessee goals and objectives. They are supporting the Gear Up Tennessee performance measures, which is also included in the work plan development guide. And you would also want to include activities that are sponsored by the Gear Up Tennessee Central Office. In the past, we've had some professional development and things like that, but that's going to be a little bit different going into year 8, so we'll talk about that. And then you'll also want to include on your school plans anything that you're using for match, any sort of activities or services that you're not being paid for with Gear Up funds, but it's considered part of your matching funds or matching services. You would want to include that in your school plans. Your work plans would include the services that you're providing for students, that you're providing for families, and that you're providing for the educators at your high schools. This is just a copy of the school work plans that you've seen several times as it's divided into the different sections based upon who you're serving with each group. The timelines, the dates, this is the question that everyone often asks. So April 22nd is when we're asking for the drafts to be submitted to the regional coordinators. Again, these drafts do not have to be signed. They will, however, again, as we talked about earlier, your team. So the reason we've allowed as much time as possible, so it's not just 1 or 2 people sitting in an office taking our required activities chart and putting it into the school work plans. We've allowed enough time to where you can get together as a collaborative, where all these people can meet, whether it's at the same time or not, and come up with a very comprehensive work plan. Also, as many of you know, there's kind of a going back and forth process. So the ones that are due on April 27th do not have to be signed by site coordinators, project directors, principals, project directors of schools, or anything like that. They will be submitted, and the regional coordinators here at the central office will go through them, make sure that we're meeting all the requirements, making sure it works with your budgets and that sort of thing. And then there's usually often a kind of a back and forth between each collaborative and the central office for a couple of weeks. Then it's the actual final versions that are going to be due on May 17th. Those will need to be signed by everyone that's listed on the collaborative and on the school plans. All right. Again, there are just a couple of things that are new, but I want to mention those and talk about them here. But if you have more questions about what's new and how this is going to work, then please feel free to reach out to me or Shayla at a later point. I think most of us are trying to get one-on-one or to meet with everybody. I know Shayla has a regional meeting coming up as well that she can talk about a couple of these things in more detail in West Tennessee. This part is not new, but I just wanted to include it because we've all realized how important it is. So college planning sessions have been a part of our requirements and a part of our work plan development process for several years now. You do them with the cohort group, and then you also do them with your seniors. It's just that one opportunity, and often it becomes opportunities that happen multiple times as a part of the college planning sessions. But to have those one-on-one meetings with a student, and with our cohort, we're able to do that early on and kind of follow up each year with college planning sessions. But with your seniors next year, sometimes this is the first time that you've met with them. It's the first time that maybe sometime anybody has really met with them and had that conversation about What do you want to do? How are you going to get there? How can we help you? What are the steps that must be taken? So I think it's really different when we're working with a group of seniors that we really never worked with before, like you all have done this year and like we're going to be doing again next year. So I think the college planning sessions are key, that you're really starting with a blank slate with many of these students. And we know that some of them are already on track and some of them are already planning to do these things. Some have already done a lot of exploration. And we also know that we have others that have not done these things, and they need all the help and support that they can get. And I think that goes back to what we talked about a few minutes ago, that the level of support and resources that you provide each student, your services are going to be very different based upon what their needs look like based upon these college planning sessions. This is something that's going to be really new. It's going to be very, very different. Hopefully this is something that you all have been excited about. It's something that you all have mentioned to us many times. Both at this last INSEP session and at the previous INSEP session, Garipa, Arizona had what they called a launch guide. It was a senior guide that is, I guess maybe 60 or so pages that goes through all the things that seniors should be completing, should be working on, should be doing to prepare themselves for after high school. We're making a Tennessee version of this. I provided a link here on the PowerPoint that you can click on if you're not familiar with it, and you can go and look at their guide. Ours is not completed yet, but it will be Tennessee specific. So the Tennessee Promise and Hope and things like that will be obviously a part of our guide that has not been a part of theirs. So if you look at the required services chart, you'll notice that the first column says Senior Guide. That's a section that we've never had before, an area that we've never used. What the Senior Guide is going to be very similar to their launch guide. We see this guide being something that each student will have a copy of, so we're going to print them. You'll have a printed, bound, kind of hardback copy of it, if you will. So each student will have one of these. And you can decide if this is something that you're going to give the student and they will be responsible for, or if you're going to keep in your office for each student, that is up to you. But this will actually allow each student to work their way through many of the requirements that we have. So if you look at the required services chart, that first section, just say for section 1, it talks about timelines and checklists. So all of those section 1 services in the senior guide are ways that the orientation and that next section are being addressed. Same thing, there's a section on FAFSAs and FAFSA and financial aid and scholarships and things like that. So the senior guide can be your tool to complete a lot of those requirements that we have in a way that these students, if you choose, can take this notebook home, they can write in it, they can fill things out. It can kind of, many of you the last couple of years have actually had kind of folders that you've used for each student or that you've created, or a lot of different handouts that you've had. So this is kind of an opportunity to have all those things in one place. Again, you'll hear more about our launch guide over the next couple of weeks and months. It's something that we hope to be able to do some training on over the summer, but definitely we will do training on before you receive it. And it's something that we feel like as you're putting together your team for next year, you're going to want to make sure that your counselors and your administrators and teachers, that your key teachers that you're going to work with, that they're very familiar with this guide too, because we hope that this is something that students are going to carry around throughout the day. And when they have questions about Tennessee Promise, if they may bring their launch guide to a teacher or to a school counselor and say, can you tell me about this, that we're all kind of on the same page with that. Again, this is a work in progress. So if you have questions, please reach out to us, but don't be surprised if there's some things that we just tell you, we're still working that out, but we will definitely consider and appreciate any, kind of thoughts or feedback that you have. I know most of y'all probably actually have one of these in hand. Most of y'all have probably been to this session. So if you have questions or suggestions for us, we're putting this together, please let us know. A couple other things that are changes from this year to what we've had in past years. I think the meal expense has been the maximum of $8 if it was not on campus in previous years. This year it's raised up to $10, whether it's on campus or off campus. As just costs have gone up over the last 7 years of this grant, this number has continued to be $8. And I've seen time and time again that we've had a couple of restaurants that just could not work under that. Obviously, when you can feed students for less, that's just going to give you more money for other things, but we've increased that amount. Another area that we've changed is where it says completion timelines for Tennessee Promise registration and FAFSA completion. So if you look at your required services chart, under both of those things, under the Tennessee FAFSA Frenzy, so I'm looking under required services on that first page under Tennessee FAFSA Frenzy, you will see that there's some dates and some percentage requirements. And then if you go to the next page, under the top of the next page under required services where it says Tennessee Promise Application Workshop, you also see that there's some dates and some percentage requirements. What I think all of us have found over the last couple of years, and number one, I would just pause to say that the work that we've done as a state and as Gear Up Tennessee in FAFSA completion and Tennessee Promise is amazing. It's impressive. We've said this again and again. When you compare us to the rest of the country, we're killing it. But at the same time, we're killing ourselves. We are taking, sometimes 3 and 4 months to get to the level of FAFSA completion that we have. So we're in the process right now of collecting some strategies. I know I sent out a survey to everyone about a week ago. We're also looking at some other things. So we will work with each of you to develop a FAFSA plan. You're going to receive some specific strategies from us to where basically we hope that we can get to the same place with FAFSA completion and Tennessee Promise as we have done in the past several years, but we can be more efficient about it so we can do it in a shorter period of time. So that's what that requirement is. That's also what the next change says, where it says development of FAFSA completion plan. That's what that is alluding to. This is a FAFSA plan that you're going to submit to us, but you're going to do so with some guidance and some strategies and things that we're going to provide to you, so that we're hoping that most of us can be not completed with our FAFSA, but we can be well along the way, that we can have the bulk of them done before Christmas moving forward instead of stretching out as much as we have, because that's really kind of been a loss for you, that you're spending so much time on FAFSA completion, on those seniors with that. You know this better than anybody. You've gotten behind doing so many other things and other students that you need to serve because of that. Next is, again, because your funding is going to be a little bit different, NCEP attendance. I think we have included NCEP on the requirements just to make sure that everyone is aware of it and that there's those opportunities, but it's not going to be a requirement. It's going to be optional. You know that NCEP attendance usually is in the range of about $3,000 a person. So you can decide, do I just want one person to attend a conference? Well, I just attend one of the 2 conferences. Am I going to seek outside funds to go to NCEP, which could be match or something like that? The other thing that we have not included as a requirement, again, it's on there because we know how important it is, and we know how important it may be for certain students. Again, we've said these are seniors that you're working with that have not been a part of Gear Up. So maybe, again, this is a time that you can partner with an institution for a visit or something like that, or you're selecting particularly what students you're going to take on a campus visit. So campus visits are not going to be a requirement, but again, something that you definitely can do and we would recommend. The last thing that I would mention in this area that's optional, we've had the last several years, we've had professional development that we've offered in Nashville. So you would drive back and forth. A lot of you would stay overnight and those sorts of things. So those will either be via webinar, or they will be optional, or they will be regional. So it would not necessarily be required for you to drive back and forth to professional development in Nashville next year. And then the last thing is, each year for the last 7 years, we've had a kickoff in August, usually about the 3rd week of August, as a statewide kickoff. Excuse me. Next year, what we will do is have regional kickoffs, one in East Tennessee and one in West Tennessee. They will be similar in how they're done and that sort of thing, but just to, again, so you don't have the expenses of driving to Nashville and spending the night and coming back. The last thing, and there's a form that we will provide you for this, is about TRIO programs. I think most of our schools that we work in have an educational talent search, have an upward bound program in the school, and what we need to capture, it's fine that you are serving the same students that upward bound or educational talent search may be, but what we cannot do is count the same service. So if you're taking students on a campus visit, and these are also educational talent search students, we can't count the service and educational talent search because they're also a federally funded program. We both can't capture that same service for those particular students. So we have a form that we're going to hand out in the next couple of weeks that you will use next year, first to tell us which of your high schools have certain TRIO programs, and then so you can collaborate with those programs, which we definitely is something that we want to do, and I know y'all have done really well. So as we collaborate with them, we're making sure that we're serving every student very well. Summer Melt, your summer program this year, just like last year, is going to focus on Summer Melt. It's going to focus on your seniors, preparing them for post-secondary education, making sure that those bumps that may sometimes occur and come up, whether they're financial, whether they're verification issues, whether it's transportation, whether it's testing, whatever it may be. This may be those last-minute decisions that a student has about where they're going to go to college or if they're going to go or what they're going to do, that we know that their minds change and those sorts of things, sometimes based on friends or anything like that. So those decisions that you can help students with and get over that during June and July before their August enrollment period starts. That will be so there wouldn't be a different summer program other than if you have a credit recovery or remediation during the summer for those seniors that may not have graduated, and then also to work on summer melt with those students who have graduated and are preparing for college. Next, you have 3 requirements for those students. So next year, you're going to serve your seniors, and you're also going to serve your group of seniors this year that are in college. We're going to do that the exact same way that you've been doing it this year, except we know that a big difference is the seniors the college freshmen, that you've been serving this year are your cohort students. So you know them really well. You've had many years of relationships with them. So this year it's going to be different, that these are going to be the seniors that you're serving right now as they go on to your post-secondary institutions. We should be able to provide you with some similar kind of tracking that we did last year to tell you where the majority of your students are going, not necessarily where these students are going, but where most of your students have matriculated to over the last couple of years. And that can give you an idea of what your schedule will look like next year when you go on college campus visits and whether or not you choose to do workshops at those colleges. Also, we're going to have a senior survey that you will do at the end of this year, just like you did last year, so you can make sure that you have their phone numbers, because you'll do lots of work by texting. We'll be using Signalvine with them, just like we have this year as their seniors. We'll continue to use that as their freshmen. So your three requirements for your college students are going to be monthly student check-ins, using Signalvine as texting, and the workshops or visits that you'll have to their institution. All 3 of those things will work just like they did last year. You already have seniors' phone numbers for texting, but we know that those change, so we'll give you have the opportunity to update those on the 15th of every month. And then at the end of this school year, we would usually recommend, a week or 2 before graduation, you go through and do that senior survey and make sure that all their phone numbers are the same as what you have in the system. It's also an opportunity that if you have people who have not been a part of texting this year as seniors, or they started and ended it, but now going to college, they would like to have that level of support again, then they can go back and give you their phone number and give you permission to do that, so they would be a part of Signalvine again next year. Again, on the phone numbers, you're going to collect them at the end of this year. Some people would like to, so you're also going to be working with seniors next year. So if you wanted to collect phone numbers at the end of this spring for current juniors, rising seniors, we would definitely recommend that. And we can go ahead and put those in Signalvine over the summer. You can also add students to Signalvine as you have been all of this year. You'll send those to Suzette, and she will get those uploaded to Signalvine. And again, we'll have the same our exit survey that we did last year that we'll use this year for your seniors as they're matriculating to become college freshmen. INSEP, again, is an allowable expense, but is not a requirement next year. This would be both for the July conference 2019 or for the February 2020 conference. And I think that is everything that we had to cover. If you have any questions, please feel free to type anything into the question and answer or type it into the chat. If you want to ask the question and we need to unmute you, then just let us know that, and we can do that as well. Also know that if there's questions or concerns or things that you're thinking about that you don't quite have down or figured out, please feel free to follow back up with me or Shayla, either one as well. What questions do you have? All right, no one has typed in any questions. I'm not sure if I'm very thorough, you're very experienced, or you've just got 20,000 other things to do today, so you're ready to move on. So we'll go ahead and close out the webinar. Again, this will be recorded. We'll send out the link to that, as well as we'll put all the documents that I emailed out yesterday. We will put those up on the website and give you the information about that. That should go out tomorrow. And again, if there's things that you just right now you're not wanting to type in, or you're not exactly sure how to ask the question, you know that you can definitely reach out to any of us at any point and ask us that question or seek more advice or anything like that, and we're always happy to help you. Again, thank you for all the work that you do, and we really appreciate it. And again, we're so excited that we'll continue to be partners and get to participate in this work with you all for another year. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.